Hello everyone. I hope all of you are doing well. This is going to be a very short video where we are going to be talking about how exactly we are supposed to be writing SOPs for FMS, why exactly we are writing these SOPs, and pretty much everything in between. So, the broader idea is, what is an SOP? SOP stands for Standard Operating Process. But when we talk about admissions, this largely stands for Statement of Purpose. The whole idea of FMS asking you to write an SOP is to just understand where do you fit. Is an MBA something that is a well thought out decision for you, or is it just something that you are doing because everyone is doing an MBA these days? So this is not something that is idiosyncratic to FMS. You are going to be asked to write SOPs for a lot of other institutions after your CAT. IIM Bangalore, IIM Calcutta, NMIMS, IITs, SPGen, almost every major institution is going to ask you to write an SOP, or at least a variant or a derivative of SOP in some way. Some of them will specifically say write an SOP. ISB does that. ISB's newer 2-year MBA program has a certain dedicated SOP related field in their form. But then there could be a derivative of SOPs as well. What people normally do is that instead of tagging that entire form as SOP or that particular field as SOP, they will just name it differently. What are your career goals? Now, that is ideally something that you are supposed to include in your SOPs. So, this is something that's very, very important because for most of you, this is probably the first time you are actually writing out an entire SOP. So, this is just something to help you understand why SOPs are important, how exactly you should be writing them. The main part about SOPs is, please do not think that you can just go to ChatGPT, give it a few personal details of your life, and then just get it to write an SOP for you. That's not how it's going to work. If you think that this is a good idea, please let me tell you, if the people who are going to be reviewing those SOPs are not stupid. They know what is the plagiarized content. They know what is a copy pasted SOP. They know what is an AI generated content. We have very sophisticated AI detectors at this point. It's not going to be a very difficult job to figure out whether something is AI generated or not. And this is something that's very, very important for your career. So maybe take that 30 minutes to just write an SOP. You have studied so much, you have done a lot of hard work. Don't just throw away that really good college, really good business school because you are too lazy to just write 100 words. The other important thing that I really want you to focus on is that your SOP needs to have a structure. When we talk about the overall idea of an SOP is supposed to include a few details about you. Gives me an introduction about yourself. भैया आपको एमबीए क्यों करना है अपने बारे में बताओ एमबीए क्यों करना है एफएमएस से एमबीए क्यों करना है if all of that is fine, why should an institution like FMS take you? And then maybe a couple of lines that are left towards the end that just summarize the rest of the SOPs. Now, generally for SOPs, when you probably hopefully will write an SOP for IIM Bangalore or for most of these other colleges, you are given somewhere around 800 to 1000 words for writing an entire SOP. But for FMS, these are not 1000 words, these are approximately 1000 characters. So you cannot definitely write anything more than 100 to 150 words in your FMS SOP. So you have pretty much just 10% of the content, and you are still supposed to fix as much information onto your SOPs as you possibly can. A really good way to structure an entire SOP is to first start with an introduction, as it give a one line or maybe a 15-20 line introduction about yourself. What are you? How do you define yourself in, let's say, one or two sentences? I am an engineer. I am a CS graduate from IIT X, from IIT Bombay, from IIT Delhi. Then, why do you want to go for an MBA? I want to go for an MBA, for instance, because it's going to give me tremendous growth in my career. I want to break into the front offices of an investment bank. I want to get into consulting. I cannot get into consulting without an MBA. I just want to get into an MBA for career progression because without an MBA, there is no future for me. Why should FMS take you? You have proven that you want to go for an MBA. Everyone wants to go for an MBA. But how does the institute benefit by taking you? This is the meatier part of your entire SOP. Most of your content, maybe 30 to 40 to 50% of your content should be focused on this particular part. Why should the institute take you? And this is where your originality, this is where your examples come into the foray. Whenever you mention things, why an institute should take you, in your SOP or even in your interviews once you start preparing for it. The meatier part, the important part to highlight here is what makes you different from, let's say, the remaining 3 lakh candidates who have signed up for CAT, the remaining 1 lakh candidates who have filled the SOPs for FMS. What makes you different? What's unique about you? That's the important part that you really need to focus on. Because, see, to be very, very honest, almost every introduction is going to be common with a lot of people. There are going to be thousands of engineers, if not lakhs, who are going to be applying for FMS. There are going to be a lot of people who have a really good YMBA rationale. Because to be honest, there aren't a lot of rationals to go for an MBA. There are hardly like 10, 15 major cases, and then everything is a sub. People want higher salary, people basically want growth in their career or something of that sort. And that's basically the major reason why people normally go for an MBA. So the first half of, or maybe the 20-25% of SOPs is largely very, very common in people or in between the applicants. The only differentiating factor that you have in your SOP is why should the institute select you? And how do you write this part in a better way? By focusing on events that happened in your life. By citing examples. SOPs are a very, very good place to sell things that you have done, to talk about your achievements, to talk very, very highly of your career, of yourself, things about yourself that you probably would never be able to speak about anywhere else in your entire journey or in your entire form. You did something. Some disaster happened. You lost your house in that natural disaster. You were the one who built everything from scratch, obviously with masons and everything, with contractors and everything, but you made sure you took that responsibility to do something. You delivered an entire project on your own at your workplace. You did sufficient valuation and you helped the company save $5 million. All of these are original examples. No one can copy paste an example like this. Cite things like these, that when XYZ incident happened, I realized that I could have probably done better had I had the know-how of an MBA. I spoke to my managers. I had the solution, but I did not know how to articulate that solution, and that's why I want to go for an MBA. But under no circumstance should you go for plagiarism or should you go for AI. And I will also give you an example of why that's a very bad idea. And I will also give you ways of how you can probably use AI to further write your SOP in a better way. In terms of grammar checks, in terms of pretty much everything else, it would be very, very stupid of us not to use AI. When I say do not use AI, I am saying do not use ChatGPT or Claude to just write the entire SOP for you and just copy paste that content into your FMS form. Don't do that. But that doesn't mean that you shouldn't be using AI for something else, like restructuring your sentences, making your SOP slightly in a better way. So here's a very fun statistic for you that we have gathered over the past few years. To be to be more precise, over the past 3 years. We reviewed somewhere around 1,000 SOPs over the past 3 years, because it's really, really not possible for us to review more than 200, 300 SOPs in a given year. So this is basically what we did. If you were to just look up what's the average length of a word in English language, it will give you something around 4.7. Let's just say it's 5, right? The average length of characters that we see in SOPs, all the SOPs that we review, is 6.28. Again, we are really getting into the data analysis bit here. We do all of that. We just ran a very simple Python script to calculate all of this. No one actually opened all of these Word documents to do that. Out of these SOPs, out of these close to 1,200 SOPs that we reviewed, the selected SOPs actually had a smaller word length. It's a very common misconception between people that you, amongst people, that you really, really have to go out of your way and you need to really decorate your entire language, that you really need to use big vocabulary, difficult vocabulary, big words to sound smart. No, that is not the case. Obviously, you are supposed to use good words, but that doesn't mean that you have to use difficult words. You can write an SOP with good sounding words without making the language of your entire SOP to be very, very difficult. At the end of the day, a normal human being is going to review your SOP during your interviews. If you make it out to be extremely pretentious, you are not gaining any favors by writing a pretentious SOP to begin with. That's one of the reasons why we normally see that rejected SOPs tend to have a bigger word length, average word length, as compared to the selected SOPs. Now, does this mean that you need to write very small words in your SOPs? No, it doesn't. Right? It just means that there isn't actually a lot of difference between selected and rejected SOPs. It's just a pointed difference, and obviously the average is going to be skewed towards rejected SOPs purely because there will be more rejections by FMS than selections, even in the sample space that we have. But the larger point here remains that do not think that you have to write a lot of good, decorated, and beautiful words. You just have to write simple English, as simple as that. Obviously, You need to be crisp in your language. You need to pick words that give the context properly, but that doesn't really imply that you need to pick words that are very, very difficult and out of normal parlance. Now, let's come back to what exactly we talked about here. Let's take an actual example. This is something that a student of ours from 2016 batch wrote for his SOP, and I've just reproduced it because at this point that person is no longer going to care about that. Hey, we are using his SOP. I'm pretty sure he doesn't even remember that this is his SOP. So yeah, this is a model SOP of a candidate who has done his MBA from FMS. Now let's see. Having completed my graduation in mechanical engineering and being associated with a research and analytics firm, I am convinced this is your introduction part, right? This person started by introducing himself that, hey, this is who I am. This is what I do. I'm a mechanical engineer. I work in a research and analytics firm. Obviously, he mentioned the name of the firm. I just redacted it and rewrote it in a just to protect his identity. But yeah, this is basically what we have. He gave his introduction. Now, let's come to the later part of this entire SOP. I am convinced that I would excel in a role which requires strategic thinking, taking business decisions, and solving real problems. Why does this person think so? My degree and work experience have jointly provided a strong foundation for my analytical skills since it involves business research augmented with in-depth analysis and situations to generate profitable insights for clients. Now, this is this person's part of why the institute should select him. Now, again, going back to the same thing, when we talked about the structure of SOP, we talked about the 20 30 20 30 20 structure. These are in percentage terms, and obviously, given that we are supposed to write something around 100, 120, 125, 150 words, this is kind of also gives you a rough idea of how many words there should be in your introduction, how many words roughly there should be in your YMBA part. Now, it doesn't really mean that you have to strictly follow this order, that your introduction should be there, then you have to talk about YMB. Obviously, you can jumble things out. You can mix things out. This person pretty much mixed his introduction with the why the institute should select me. Then he talked about why he wants to go for an MBA. And you can also just completely skip out on conclusion because you do not really have a lot of words to write about. So importantly, you just need to remember that your major focus should be on why the institute should select you. Talk about those examples, talk about your work experience. And this is exactly what this person has also done. He majorly talked about that his degree equips him for XYZ. I feel that besides technical skills, management skills and enough knowledge of business and management are required to at a next level in my career. And that's why I want to go for an MBA. This is this person's why MBA part and why FMS part. That this is going to help me leverage things. Obviously, if I were to take this entire SOP, I would have asked this person to shorten this particular part out and maybe focus a bit more. But anyway, this SOP still got selected because this person had a very good CAT percentile. But in a very ideal scenario, if we were to take this SOP and maybe rewrite it, I would have still suggested this part to be slightly on the shorter side and maybe focusing a bit more here. So you get the broader idea. Introduction, why MBA, why should the institute select you in that particular order. You do not really have to give actionable points. You do not really have to talk about exact examples. You can just talk about the conclusion of examples that, hey, I work in finance. I worked as a trader. That gives me the pressure. That gives me the ability to work in high pressure scenarios. Now, obviously, I think that I want to explore other sides of finance, and that's why I'm going to go for an MBA, which is going to help me get to a different side of finance. Because with a normal graduation degree, I probably wouldn't be able to get into the front office side. Let's do one more example. Let's just see how someone who worked in a startup profile could have written their SOP. As part of startup system, joined a startup company which has got this new vocational training centers in Patna, where I had found my calling of becoming an entrepreneur by conducting research work, plan out strategies, execute the strategies thus made to generate sales and revenue. This is basically this person's introduction, what he does. My degree has given a strong foundation to my analytical skills since it involves a lot of long, complex, intricate calculations and the application of basic math skills. Again, this person has talked about what is he bringing to the table. That, hey, I have worked in XYZ places and I have worked on XYZ areas. So this works as his introduction and also the part of why the institute should select him, because this person has worked in a startup. He has probably worked on broader things, more things as compared to a normal person who goes and works in an MNC. With the vision of being part of a self-made marketing and sales brand, I reckon that masters in business will further qualify me to average my intuitive market knowledge and better advance me for future entrepreneur challenges. And I believe FMS is the right place for that. And this is basically this person's why MBA part, why he wants to go for an MBA, and that too particularly from FMS. So introduction, what does he bring to the table? Why does he think MBA is the right thing for him? So pretty much the exact same thing that we talked about. You just need to focus on these three things. Obviously, focusing a lot more on your introduction, a lot more on why you should go for an MBA. Let's do once more. This is again just a financial analyst. We again talk about the introduction. We again talk about this person being a financial analyst and how he delivered certain programs. He worked in Barclays particularly, and then he had a dream. And to realize his dream, he wants to go for an MBA. Let's do one more. You want to start your own business. Then you realize business start करने के लिए funding चाहिए, funding के लिए MBA चाहिए. And this is again pretty much what this person wrote, but in a much more polished manner. With the aim of being an entrepreneur, I realized that in an environment where I can network with enterprising and like-minded people to get exposure of the global world to comprehend the dynamics of multinational organization is an important as the idea itself. This is the why MBA part. I'm constantly working towards my dream, and in order to come up with some great ideas, I have been following all the news, blah blah blah, politics, scrutinizing purpose behind my new invention in the field of science and technology, enabling me to contribute significantly to any environment. This is this person's what do I bring to the table? I've done a lot of scrutiny. I've done a lot of research in the field of science and technology. I am the researcher. I am probably a data scientist. I'm probably a scientist in general. I know more about XYZ than a lot of people, maybe 99% of the planet, 99.5% of the planet. That's my contribution. That's what I bring to the table. And again, he continues with his by MBA part. He then connects both of his points to talk about this. Same structure. Introduction, talk about yourself, talk about your career, talk about your goals, talk about how all of that ties up with an MBA program. Talk about how you are going to play an important role in an MBA program. Again, let me kind of give more context to why I constantly have been talking about bringing something to the table. Because see, at the end of the day, you are not going to be learning a lot from your classrooms. You are not going to join an MBA program because you want to just go and sit in the classrooms and just be like, हाँ मुझे सब आता है, ठीक है, classes है मैंने सब सीख लिया. If you just wanted to go through classes, you can still just go to Coursera or edX. You can pretty much learn everything that an MBA can teach you. आज की डेट में YouTube वगैरह पे सब फ्री में अवेलेबल है. Why are you going to spend so much money on your CAT coaching and then your forms and then your MBA, then 2 years of salary just to get a degree? अगर नॉलेज ही चाहिए तो इंटरनेट पे मिल जाएगा सब इजीली. सारे के सारे एफएमएस का सिलेबस निकाल के बुक्स पढ़ लो. राइट. The important thing is that you are going to learn a lot from your classmates as well. That networking part is the unspoken part about MBA. That this is probably something that's going to add more value towards your career and your long-term career than the tag of MBA, then the knowledge of MBA. Knowledge 5 साल में किसी को याद नहीं रहेगी. All of you are graduates in the recent past. You don't remember what you studied in the 3 or 4 years of your graduation. You are not going to remember most of the stuff that you are going to be reading in your MBA either after a while. The important part is that network is important. You can talk about that network. That I'm going to go for an MBA because I want to build a network so that I can maybe leverage that network for something. That's where your diversity comes into the play. If you are able to cite an example that makes you stand out, that I am different from the crowd because I am able to bring something to the table that 99% of the other people are not able to get, you stand to have a better chance than those 99% of the people because you stand to teach people something to your network that most of the other people won't be able to teach. You are a commerce person, you are maybe a CA, you suddenly go in a group of engineers. You are going to be the star of that group because all the engineers already know what an engineer is supposed to know. In their discussions related to academics, they are not going to be helping each other grow because all of them exactly have pretty much the same level of knowledge in their subjects. Maybe 19-20 का 19 किसका फर्क आएगा, but they don't know anything outside of their domain. You, being from a different background, you are able to help that entire group. Similarly, someone from a liberal arts, someone from, let's say, a philosophy background comes into the foray, someone from economics background comes into the foray. They tend to elevate everything. You learn from the engineers, you teach them economics, you teach them accountancy, everyone grows. That's the part that we really, really want to focus on. That help us understand this baseline. Help us understand this fact that I am going to help the entire group. I am going to help the institution. I am not just going for an MBA because मुझे फायदा उठाना है. Institute also needs me as much as I need the institute, if not more. That has to be how the SOP has to be written. And again, that kind of becomes more challenging if you start to include the 100 word limit, obviously a 1,000 character limit. If you had a lot of characters like for I am Bangalore and all of that, you definitely get a lot more words, a lot more real estate to talk about things. So you can elaborate on examples. You can cite 2, 3 examples of things that happened with you. But for FMM, just keep it short. You don't have to cite exact examples, but if you want to, you can do that. That also brings us to a few very common questions that I'll just walk over the next 2, 3 minutes. Uh, what you shouldn't do for your for your SOPs. You डेफिनेटली डू नॉट वांट टू यूज एनी क्लीशेस। ठीक है, एक बार के लिए कि बार बार के लिए कि भैया हम टीम प्लेयर हैं, हम इफेक्टिव हैं, एफिशिएंट हैं, एक्सेप्शनल हैं, ये सारी की सारी चीजें लिखने का नीड नहीं है। सारे के सारे लोग जो एफएमएस में अप्लाई करें, सारे के सारे बच्चे एक्सेप्शनली हैं। इस तरीके की चीजें लिखने का कोई मतलब नहीं है। सब टीम प्लेयर होते हैं। दीज आर जस्ट गार्बेज बज़वर्ड्स एट दिस पॉइंट। इनको एसओपी में लगा के वैसे ही आप अपना रियल एस्टेट ही खराब कर रहे हो। डू नॉट बी वर्बोस। अगर कोई एक चीज 5 वर्ड्स में लिखी जा सकती है, उसको 5 वर्ड्स में लिखो। ये मत सोचो कि बस एक बार के लिए बड़े बड़े वर्ड्स यूज करना है, प्रिटेंशियस तरीके से दिखावा करना है। कॉस्मेटिक लैंग्वेज हमें नहीं चाहिए, हमें ऑस्टेंटेशन नहीं चाहिए हमारे एसओपी के अंदर। सिंपल सी लैंग्वेज लिखो। वी वेंट थ्रू सो मेनी एग्जांपल्स। किसी भी एसओपी के अंदर आपको ऐसा एक भी वर्ड नहीं दिखा होगा जो आपको नहीं पता होगा पहले। वेरी वेरी प्लेन, वेरी वेरी वनीला एसओपीज, राइट? नॉट इवन अ सिंगल एसओपी विच कंटेन वर्ड्स लाइक कि मेरे जीवन के अंदर बहुत सैंक्टिमोनी है, मैं बहुत ही संजीवन इंसान हूँ, दिस इज आई एम अ टीम प्लेयर। इस तरीके की चीजें आप नहीं देखोगे अच्छे एसओपीस के अंदर। अपने एसओपीस के अंदर भी वो चीज नहीं लिखो। एंड देन ऑफ कोर्स वी ऑल्सो गो विद द आइडिया, you also need to avoid unequivocal statements. What do I mean by unequivocal statements? You should never speak badly about an environment. ठीक है, अनइक्विवोकल स्टेटमेंट कि मुझे ये चीज करना है। बेसिकली आई हेटेड समथिंग, आई डिटेस्टेड इंजीनियरिंग, इसलिए मुझे एमबीए करना है। आप एक चीज की बुराई करके ये नहीं बोल सकते हो कि मुझे वो चीज अच्छी नहीं लगी इसलिए मुझे ये करना है, मुझे कोडिंग अच्छी नहीं लगती इसलिए मुझे एमबीए में जाके अपना करियर फील्ड चेंज करना है। दीज आर नॉट द सॉर्ट ऑफ स्टेटमेंट्स दैट यू वांट टू राइट। ठीक है, आप इस तरीके की स्टेटमेंट्स नहीं लिख सकते हो कि मुझे सोसाइटी में कंट्रीब्यूट करना है। सोसाइटी में कंट्रीब्यूट करने के लिए एमबीए नहीं चाहिए आपको, अभी से जाके कंट्रीब्यूट कर सकते हो, जाके वॉलंटियरिंग वगैरह करो। ठीक है, उसके लिए एमबीए नहीं लगेगा। इस तरीके की स्टेटमेंट्स आप अपने एसओपीज में नहीं लिख सकते। ऑब्वियसली फॉर्म में जगह मिलेगी आपको, कभी इंटरव्यूज के टाइम पे इंटरव्यू में बोल सकते हो। 100 120 वर्ड के एसओपी के अंदर इस तरीके की चीजें मत लिखो कि मुझे ये चीजें करनी है, सोसाइटी को कंट्रीब्यूट करना है, मैं खुद का मास्टर बनना चाहता हूँ। कोट्स वगैरह के ऊपर जनरली स्पीकिंग माई टेक वुड बी अनो, कि तुम्हारे पास में इतनी जगह नहीं है एक बार के लिए कि तुम और किसी का स्टेटमेंट लेकर आओ। 100 120 वर्ड्स के अंदर अगर तुम एक छोटा सा भी कोटेशन लेकर लिख रहे हो, इट विल टेक अप मे बी व्हाट 10 to 12 15% ऑफ योर एंटायर अलाउेबल वर्ड लिमिट। सो डोंट प्रोबेबली गो फॉर दैट। अगर कुछ भी लिखने के लिए नहीं है देन ऑब्वियसली लिख सकते हो। देन ऑफ कोर्स योर एसओपी शुडंट बी रिडंडेंट। एक चीज एक ही बार लिखो क्योंकि स्पेस काफी ज्यादा कम है एक बार के लिए। बिल्कुल एंड मोमेंट के ऊपर एसओपी मत लिखना, किसी और का एसओपी कॉपी पेस्ट मत करना। वी टॉक्ड अबाउट अ फ्यू केसेस हियर एंड देयर, उनको कॉपी पेस्ट मत करना किसी भी तरीके से। दैट वोंट वर्क, इट वोंट हेल्प यू। अपने शॉर्ट टर्म गोल्स के बारे में आप बात कर सकते हो, अपने लॉन्ग टर्म गोल्स के बारे में आप बात कर सकते हो। ये आपका पार्ट होता है कि आपको एमबीए क्यों करना है। मुझे एमबीए करना है क्योंकि शॉर्ट टर्म में और लॉन्ग टर्म में मुझे ये चीज अचीव करनी है, एमबीए मुझे वो चीज अचीव करने में हेल्प करेगा। ठीक है, जितना छोटा तरीके से आप चीजें लिख सकते हो उतने छोटे तरीके से लिखो। ठीक है, चीजों को बीच बीच में कैपिटलाइज मत करो एक बार के लिए। ठीक है, नॉर्मल अपना ग्रामर वगैरह चेक करो। ज्यादा ऑब्वियसली अब आप पहले जब हमने डॉक्यूमेंट बनाया था पूरा का पूरा बैक इन 2014 15 16, उस टाइम के ऊपर फिजिकल फॉर्म भेजना पड़ता था एफएमएस को। अभी सब कुछ कंप्यूटराइज्ड है, देन ऑब्वियसली अभी ये वाला पार्ट इतना ज्यादा सेंस बनाता नहीं है कि आपको अपने वर्ड लिमिट को अडेयर करना है। वो ऑब्वियसली सिस्टम ही आपको अलाउ नहीं करेगा। बट एनीवे, अगर आपको दे रखा है 1000 कैरेक्टर्स का लिमिट, देन यू शुड बी फिलिंग अप एटलीस्ट 90% ऑफ इट। आपको एटलीस्ट 9000 कैरेक्टर्स तो फिल करने ही करने हैं। ठीक है, 1000 के ऊपर नहीं जा सकते, बट एटलीस्ट यूज 90% ऑफ दिस। दैट सेड, एक छोटा सा एग्जांपल देखते हैं अभी के लिए। लेट मी शेयर हाउ वी कैन यूज एआई फॉर एवरीथिंग। यहाँ पे 2 3 वेबसाइट्स के बारे में बात करते हैं अभी। सबसे पहले ये है कि एक हमने ले लिया, मैंने जो यहाँ पे इसको बोला ब्राउजर को राइट 100 वर्ड एसओपी, तो यहाँ पे मुझे एक जनरल सी एसओपी बनाकर दे दी इसने। पता नहीं कोई सा रैंडम सा एआई है। अब ये इसका हम क्या कर सकते हैं ना, इसको हम हेमिंग एडिटर में डाल सकते हैं, हेमिंगवे ऐप के अंदर डाल सकते हैं। यहाँ पे आप अपनी चीजें डालोगे। अब हेमिंगवे ऐप क्या करेगा, आपको वर्ड्स का एक बार के लिए पूरा का पूरा कैरेक्टर्स वगैरह का एक बार के लिए लेंथ बता देता है कि कितनी ज्यादा चीजें हो रही हैं। एंड देन इट विल ऑल्सो ग्रेड यू ऑन सेंटेंसेस कि ये वाला पूरा का पूरा सेंटेंस का कॉम्प्लेक्सिटी क्या है। 2 of 6 सेंटेंसेस आर वेरी हार्ड टू रीड, तो आप वो सेंटेंसेस अपना चेंज कर सकते हो। ये रेड वाले सेंटेंसेस हैं, आपका ग्रामर यहाँ पे एक बार के लिए सही नहीं है, सारी की सारी चीजें हेमिंगवे आपको बता देगा, ताकि फिर आप सेंटेंसेस के ऊपर फोकस करके चीजों को एडिट कर सकते हो। ठीक है, फॉर इंस्टेंस यहाँ पे हमें दे रखा है 2 of 6 सेंटेंसेस आर वेरी हार्ड टू रीड, तो ये वाला सेंटेंस हमारा अच्छा नहीं है। ठीक है, माई अंडर ग्रेजुएट स्टडीज इन XYZ laid द फाउंडेशन फॉर माई नॉलेज एंड स्किल्स। इस चीज को हम किसी ना किसी तरीके से रिफ्रेश कर सकते हैं। लेट्स सी, इसको अगर मुझे रिफ्रेश करना होगा, आई कुड से माई अंडर ग्रेजुएट स्टूडेंट स्टडीज इन इकोनॉमिक्स laid the foundation for my knowledge and skills फॉर ब्ला ब्ला ब्ला। अगेन यहाँ पे बस ये ब्रैकेट वाला पार्ट हटा लिया हमने, तो ये पूरा का पूरा चेंज हो गया। एज एन एनालिस्ट, significant experience that motivated me to apply was during research of Reliance stock. ठीक है, where I did where I achieved XYZ. So you can definitely, you probably get the idea कि किस तरीके से tools वगैरह use कर सकते हो. Another thing that you should be using is Killbot. Killbot के बेसिस के ऊपर आप बस चीज़ें अपने पैराफ्रेज कर सकते हो, ग्रामर वगैरह अपना चेक कर सकते हो, ये चेक कर सकते हो कि वो एआई डिटेक्टर है या नहीं है। ठीक है, एक बार के लिए चीज़ों को समराइज वगैरह कर सकते हो, तो killbot.com के ऊपर भी चीज़ें जाकर अपना ग्रामर वगैरह चेक कर लेना। कोई सेंटेंस एक बार चेक कर लो कि क्या बेटर तरीके से लिखा जा सकता है। सो अगर मैं ये चीज़ को फॉर इंस्टेंस वापस से कॉपी पेस्ट करता हूँ, हेमिंगवे के ऊपर मुझे फॉर इंस्टेंस दिखा रहा है कि ये वाला सेंटेंस बहुत ज़्यादा डिफिकल्ट है। ठीक है, उसको जस्ट यहाँ पे एक बार के लिए कॉपी पेस्ट कर लो, ये आपको एक आइडिया दे देगा पूरा का पूरा कि उसको किस तरीके से बेटर तरीके से लिखा जा सकता है। सो ये मैंने लिखा, मैंने इसको पैराफ्रेज करा। ये मुझे थोड़ा सा उसको चेंज करके दे देगा। एंड देन लास्टली, जब आपका पूरा का पूरा एसओपी, आप हर सेंटेंस को चेंज कर लो, अच्छे से अपना पूरा का पूरा एसओपी लिख लो, देन देर इज वन मोर वेबसाइट कॉल्ड पेपर रेटर। पेपर रेटर के ऊपर बस अपना कंटेंट एक बार के लिए चेंज करो। यहाँ पे एक बार के लिए अपना पूरा का पूरा ग्रेजुएट स्कूल मास्टर्स को यहाँ पे सिलेक्ट करना, एजुकेशन लेवल, टाइप ऑफ पेपर दैट आई एम सबमिटिंग शुड बी, आई एम नॉट एबल टू स्क्रॉल दिस, सॉरी। टाइप ऑफ पेपर इज बेसिकली, आप यहाँ पे ऐसे सिलेक्ट कर सकते हो, आप यहाँ पे अदर करके एसओपी भी लिख सकते हो। ठीक है, जो भी आपको ठीक लगता है, इसको एक्सेप्ट करो और देन इसको गेट रिपोर्ट पे क्लिक कर दो। एडवांस चेक में आपको पे करना पड़ेगा, जस्ट क्लिक ऑन गेट रिपोर्ट्स, ये आपको पूरा का पूरा रिपोर्ट जनरेट करके दे देगा कि कहाँ पे ग्रामर वगैरह में प्रॉब्लम्स हैं, कहाँ पे क्या चीज़ आप इंप्रूव कर सकते हो। सो इसको भी आप यूज़ कर सकते हो। थोड़ा सा वर्क अराउंड एक बार के लिए, बट ऑब्वियसली ये सारे के सारे टूल्स आप यूज करके वेरीफाई कर सकते हो कि जो भी आप लिख रहे हो एटलीस्ट उसमें ग्रामेटिकल मिस्टेक्स नहीं है, आप क्लीशेस वगैरह यूज नहीं कर रहे हो, आप प्रपोजिशनल मिस्टेक्स नहीं कर रहे हो, आपके सेंटेंस सही तरीके से स्ट्रक्चर्ड है। ये चीज अगर आप कर लेते हो, उसके बाद भी आई विल सजेस्ट कि अपना पूरा का पूरा एसओपी किसी से रिव्यू करवाओ, किसी से भी रिव्यू करवाओ, क्योंकि एक फाइनल ह्यूमन सैनिटी चेक आपको मिल जाएगा कहीं ना कहीं पे, कि कहीं पे मे बी आप कुछ गलत कर रहे हो, तो एक ह्यूमन आपको बता देगा कि हाँ, इस तरीके से आपको चीज़ें सही करनी है। अ, अगर आपको भेजना है तो आप हम लोग को भी भेज सकते हो, ऑब्वियसली, क्योंकि टाइम ज़्यादा नहीं बचा एक बार के लिए अभी एफएमएस की डेडलाइन के लिए। जितना ज़्यादा पॉसिबल है हम लोग भी रिव्यू करने का ट्राई करेंगे, बट एट द सेम टाइम आई कैन नॉट रियली अश्योर यू कि वी वुड बी एबल टू रिस्पॉन्ड टू एवरी सिंगल पर्सन, एवरी पर्सन एसओपी, बट वी विल ट्राई आवर बेस्ट टू रिव्यू एज मेनी एज वी कैन। दैट इज ऑल दैट आई हैव फॉर एसओपीज। आई होप ये सेशन के बाद में, आई ऑलमोस्ट टुक 30 मिनट्स, ये सेशन के बाद में आपको एक बेटर आइडिया मिल गया होगा कि एसओपी किस तरीके से लिखनी है, एसओपीज में क्या करना है और एसओपीज में क्या नहीं करना है। प्लीज लेट मी नो अगर किसी को फर्दर कुछ यहाँ पे प्रॉब्लम है, आई विल बी मोर देन हैप्पी टू कमेंट ऑन इट। थैंक यू।